Okay, so my name is Javier Perez. I'm with the California Energy Commission. I started off on the Energy Standards Hotline, the number that he put on his slide a few slides ago. I was answering those calls for 5+ years. If you've argued with anybody on the hotline, it was me. It was probably me. But hopefully, we left on good terms. I'm an advocate for this stuff. I ate it for breakfast for the longest time. I've been eating 2016 standards for a little while now. So hopefully we can touch on some of the points that was it Martin touched on, specifically the lighting alteration requirement and the changes, as well as how 2013 has evolved to address that now. In other words, 35% or 50% reduction is acceptable currently, in a little bit of a funny way, but we'll talk about that, as well as the different changes. So let's get in. We got 59 minutes. All right, so the 2016 standards, they came, or they're going to be in effect January 1 of 2017. So what does that mean? If you apply for permit on or after that date, you're subject to the 2016 requirements. It's a big deal. December 31st will probably be a busy day for everyone. To give you some hotline perspective, June of 2014, we had 600 calls. That was a lot from the hotline. That was a lot for a month. July of 2014, the effective month of the 2013 standards, from 600 to 1,600. Almost 3 times the amount of calls and emails that we had from one month to the next. I was sweating, but we made it. We're back down to around 800, which again is still pretty high. Anticipated to shoot up again January 1st. Master plans are going to be affected a little bit, just because if you have master plans that were approved prior to the effective date and you apply for a building permit for a new building on that same master plan, well, you're going to have to be a little bit more efficient in comparison to the 2013 standards. So what does that really mean? We'll get into that in a second. One thing that we do have ready for 2016 now, and this is a big deal, is everything's available. The modeling programs have been approved. All of our documents are available online. We're literally having our standards printed. We're going to be mailing them out to different building departments. Hopefully August, I'll be boxing them myself, so, there's... Yeah, right, about there. Yeah, some resources. It'll be good stuff. So hopefully we'll have that done soon here. Like I said, everything's approved. One of the biggest problems we had with 2013, one of the reasons that it was shifted backwards, the effective date, was that the modeling programs weren't ready to go. We went from a big change well, I guess everything was the same as far as modeling was concerned until 2013. We decided to kind of create an engine and be the main backbone for all of the different modeling programs. So that made things tough, and long story short, July became the effective date instead of January of 2014. It's looking like we'll be good to go this time around. So what's the difference, right? So what's that January 1st to December 31st difference for residential buildings? Like Martin said earlier, the goal is net zero by 2020, right? So this is the second step in 3 to hopefully to get to that goal. So for residential buildings, that means 28% more efficient than the last time around. A lot of electricity saved, a lot of gas, not much to say there other than big important thing to note is that how much does it cost, right? So the cost effectiveness for the energy standards is based off of, for residential buildings, 30-year payback, okay? So what does that mean? Your monthly life cycle cost is going to increase by, it's going to cost $11 more per month for your mortgage, but you'll save $31 on the back end on energy bill savings. So that's cost effective. Our standards can't introduce anything that's, one, not cost effective and not technically feasible. So it's got to pay for itself or more, and it's got to be readily available. It can't be something that's not possible. We'll get into that a little bit later. We'll touch on Game of Thrones, promise. So next up, non-res. What do we do? 5%. When you see 28 and you see 5, it's not a big deal, right? With net zero coming for residential in 2020, a lot of emphasis is going towards residential right now. Next cycle, 2019, it'll be the same thing. A lot of the changes for 2016 for non-residential buildings was specific to ASHRAE 90.1. We really just adopted a lot of the things that they had already made. So a little bit of savings. Actually, the gas savings, I think, is a negative number. I have to double check. It's about buildings being more efficient and loads changing. I can't remember, but not a big deal. We'll keep moving. So let's go. Residential regulations. This is kind of the boring part. It's only one slide, though, so we'll get through it really quickly. So what did we change as far as the administrative regs are concerned? Delegation of signature authority. What this means is an installing contractor can delegate, can assign somebody as their authorized representative to sign in their place. That doesn't remove any responsibility from what they've done, but it just says, hey, I don't want to get online, I don't want to log into this thing, I don't want to sign and register. I authorize this other person to sign for me. I don't know how much effect this is going to have in real life. There's some opposition to having other people sign. We won't get into that, but more importantly, we had to codify it because legally it's a change. Next up, exception was removed for new solar home partnerships. There was an exception that said building departments at their discretion could, not choose to enforce the energy measures prescriptively for residential buildings. Because NSHP at the time was sunsetting, they decided to remove this exception. Having said that, a week and a half ago, NSHP just got extended, so it's kind of interesting. I don't know that too many building departments subscribe to this kind of defer. I'm given no, so that's good. That's good. So it's the business as usual is probably going to be the real answer to this one. Now let's get into the energy measures. There's 5 on the screen, and I don't really like going over this slide as much as I do this handout here. So the first page on your handout, you've got 2 packets. The second packet, it's got a lot of resources. This one is not my favorite. More importantly, the second page is where we want to go. Oh, forgot to mention it. If somebody doesn't have the slides, there's a comment there, go away. If somebody doesn't have the slides, let me know, raise your hand. Roberto's going to take care of you here. Anybody want to? All right, we'll continue as it's coming. So this is really the coolest thing that we have, touching on cost effectiveness as well as the different measures that are introduced in 2016. Initial cost, $2,700, savings over a 30-year mortgage at 5% interest, $7,400. So what are the major changes? Lighting, all light has to be high efficacy, some higher performing walls and attics, which just means more insulation, different method on the attics, we'll touch on that in a second, and improved water heater efficiency. We're making instantaneous water heaters the baseline, whereas historically it's always been 50-gallon storage, natural gas. So this is the big deal. It's a really good graph or illustration. We have it online in color. We printed it in grayscale because it's expensive to print in color. So yeah, so that's a good resource, and I've lost my page now. Actually, I prepared to just go back. Here we are. Okay, so let's get into it. So Solar Ready, one of the only changes for Solar Ready is an exception. In 2013, what we said was if you install a smart thermostat as well as high efficacy lighting everywhere, then you don't have to meet the Solar Ready requirement. Now what does Solar Ready mean? Leave an area of your roof facing kind of south, kind of west, so that later on you can put a PV system and you don't have things that are blocking it, no shading. You know, that was really the goal. But anyways, this exception said, okay, if you don't want to do that, smart thermostat, really good lights, not a big deal. 2016, really good lights are the standard. Every single light you put in your home better be really good. We're going to get to that a little bit later. So the exception was changed. The case team basically said, since everything's going high efficacy, can we introduce some new alternatives? So the answer was sure, good idea. So smart thermostat still required here. Now there's 7 or so alternatives: Energy Star, whole house fan. A few other things, a couple of things that I want to highlight are at the very bottom here. It has to do with water. You don't think energy when you think water, but you know, water consumption and the drought really has affected even the energy standards. So rainwater catchment systems, some plumbing settings that you can do as an alternative, again, to Solar Ready. I don't know how many people will be doing this, but it's there in the event that they want to take that option. A couple things for housekeeping. Here's the requirement. This is whether it's mandatory or prescriptive. Mandatory means you got to do it. Prescriptive, it's like a recipe. You can change the recipe, make it more salty, more sweet. It's up to you. Just kind of make pasta. This is a reference to the section of the energy standard. So if you want to find this in our book, in our energy standard, section 110.10. I did this to most of the slides. I think I missed on 1 or 2, but there's a reason behind it. All right, keep moving. Water heating. Again, we said that instantaneous water heaters are now the baseline. So what does that mean? Energy factor of 0.82 versus 0.62 and some change, 0.67 and some change, depending on when it was manufactured. So with instantaneous water heaters, one of the problems is it burns a lot of water in a small little area, and you get a lot of buildup in the bottom. And with that buildup, deposits, the thing runs less efficient. So if we're going to require instantaneous water heaters, we're going to require isolation valve. What are isolation valves, right? I could walk or I could use a mouse. These things right here. The idea is we want you to be able to flush the system once a year to make sure it runs efficiently, and if we're going to require instantaneous, we've got to make sure that you install some way to make sure this thing continues to live right. So if you've got an instantaneous water heater at home, flush it, flush it. It doesn't work right if you don't. You'll see a difference. That's the idea. So water heating changes from 2013 to 16. Again, in 2013, you had 3 options: instantaneous, single gas propane, storage, and then electric resistance when natural gas wasn't available. So all of these were considered equal to the other. You can use one over the other, not a big deal. 2016, instantaneous, again, becomes the baseline. In other words, if you want to go propane, if you want to go storage, well, your max has been increased some. Now, depending on the tank size, there's different measures that you have to do. QII is quality installation of insulation, and then there's some storage or distribution hoops that you have to jump through. In other words, your storage water heater isn't as efficient as an instantaneous one, so you need to jump through some hoops to offset that efficiency, because that's now the baseline. Electric resistance option prescriptively was removed. You can go performance and still do it, but you got to model your way out of it, offset that lack of efficiency with more salt, more sugar to make pasta. Let's get to lighting. Again, if you guys have questions, interrupt me. Yeah, there it is. Let's do it.
So the water heater, is that a replacement water heater or a new water heater?
This is strictly new construction. For replacement water heaters, you can go back with storage. You can go back with electric if no natural gas is connected to the building. But yeah, this is all strictly new. Please.
Can you just, I think I may have missed what you said. You said the electric resistance removed as a prescriptive option?
That's correct.
So you can still do it?
Definitely. But you have to go performance. My understanding is 90 to 100% of these buildings are done via the performance approach, which means use computer models, show that your building is as efficient as one that maybe had an instantaneous water heater. So you offset it with something else. You can always do electric if you want to. Now, one of the alternatives that people get mixed up with, and even I did when I was on the hotline, electric resistance, literally a piece of metal gets hot, heats up water. Electric heat pumps, it's a pump. It pumps fluid, turns it into gas, or compresses it into fluid. When it compresses it, creates heat. It makes something really tight, it releases heat. Heat pump water heaters are super efficient. If you go performance, usually the ones that you'll find at your local retailers, I won't name names, are just as good as an instantaneous. In other words, you'll be pretty close to a wash with the heat pump water heater. Now, if you want to go electric resistance, well, by the time the electricity gets to you, you lose 2/3. I don't have to tell you that, but that's the concept. So for that reason, electric resistance is frowned upon.
Question.
Please.
I probably should know this, but you were talking about prescriptive requirements here, so the typical way to trade off is use the performance method.
Yes.
But you have your 2 little red arrows that make it look like it's a mandatory measure when that occurs.
Strictly prescriptive. It's in the prescriptive table or a slide, it'll be prescriptive.
So that's a prescriptive kind of trade-off, but if you use performance, you can kind of do whatever you want as long as it works. So.
Add salt, add sugar. Yeah, definitely. But so what we ended up doing, so one of the questions that I had coming into this was, what the heck does QII have to do with water heating? I don't understand how it correlates. And the answer is it doesn't, but the amount of energy that's saved with QII is pretty dang close to the amount of energy difference between an instantaneous water heater and a storage. So for that reason, that's the cookie cutter option if you want to go prescriptive. If you want to go performance, make it yours. All right, we'll keep going. Lighting. So we only have 1 slide, maybe 2 on these. It's a lot of big changes for lighting. The biggest change, and I like to say this is a change in religion for me, is that we're now recognizing screw-based sockets as high efficacy. Historically, if you can go back with an incandescent socket, that was viewed as low efficacy. Low efficacy means a little bit of light for a lot of watts. We don't like that. We don't like that at all. Efficiency is less energy, same output. So LEDs, less watts, same amount of lights. That's huge. That's why these companies make as much as they do, because you save it on your energy bill and you get the same product. So that's the goal here. So anyways, 2016, what changed is, our appliances regs are at a point where We're phasing out incandescents. We're setting regulations to where these things have to be really, really efficient or fall off the market. Not only that, we're going to require that the light source that you install in any screw base be something that's certified to the commission as being, for lack of better words, really, really good. So energy, really, really good. Light quality, really, really good. So we want them to act like incandescents. The problem with fluorescent fixtures, when I go outside and let my Penny, my Yorkie out, I turn on the light and I have to, she goes before the light even warms up, right? This is not good. So part of our certification for these lighting products is they need to act like an incandescent. The color can't be super white because that's bad for my eyes. And it's also got to turn on pretty quickly, no flicker. So there's a lot of stuff that we put in to say, if a homeowner gets this nice bulb, they're not going to change it out. They're not going to go back to incandescent. Not only that, 15,000 hours is what we want for these lights that are certified to us. So what does that mean on average? About 1,000 hours a year is what your light turns on for. 15 years. That's a long time. By that time, I hope we're in a place where there's a better option available. There's a table in the standards that I'm not really a fan of as far as determining high efficacy and low efficacy. Certain ones have to be certified to us. Other ones, they're fine as far as energy, so we let it slide. So left-hand side, right? 2013, what was high efficacy? Pin-based or combat fluorescent? These are still good to go. GU24 sockets were allowed for CFL and LEDs moving forward, just CFL. If it's a GU24 with an LED, it's got to go on our database. It's got to be certified to jump through the hoops, essentially. Also, halide induction, not a big deal. LEDs, outdoor LEDs and decorative, the ones that change color that make your room turn 49er red when the Niners score, we're not touching. Go Niners. Niners? Bay Area? Yeah, there it is. Raiders? Don't do it. Don't raise your hand. Keep it going. Skip one. Sorry. Okay, so which ones do require certification? Which ones have to jump through the hoops that we want them to jump through, right? Recessed downlight. If you've got a recessed downlight, one, it's got to have a light source that we said is great or that they told us was great through testing and certification. And they also have to be tested for elevated temperature. Recessed cans get really hot. Sometimes these things degrade over time. So not only do they have to live long, not only do they have to look nice, they better be good over 15,000 hours, because if the quality degrades, what are we doing? We're going backwards. LEDs have to jump to the same hoops, not a big deal. Screw base, if you've got a screw base socket, you better put in the light source that's certified to us to jump through those hoops. Not only that, we're going to require that the homeowners be provided a schedule of lights. So one of the things at my house is when I have to replace the lamp that burns out, I've got 6 of them in my kitchen. I don't know where the heck to find this thing. I'm zooming in really close trying to find the model number. It's not that easy. So luminaire schedule, give it to the homeowner, tell them these are the high quality ones that we gave you. If you ever need to replace them, easy to find. All others, anything that we haven't talked about, needs to go through the same hoops that we just discussed. Any questions? Please.
Does the appliance standards take care of that? In other words, eventually when I buy a design in California, will it meet those steps, or is that something we expect the building departments to get involved in?
Okay, 2 questions there. So First question, appliances. Remember that the high efficacy requirements exist only, I'm saying remember as if I said it, I haven't said this, they exist only in low-rise residential buildings. In other words, something that's not high efficacy can continue to be sold or installed in a non-res building without issue. So will appliances limit that sale? No. As far as enforcement is concerned, part of it is going to come to the homeowner. Again, if you get a schedule, it's up to you to verify it. It's impractical to say, hey, building official, hey, building inspector, bring that ladder, let's get up to this recessed can, and let's unscrew this, and let's look at every one of these. It's not possible. You guys have enough to do. So the schedule, some responsibility on the owner, leave some boxes on site, and if somebody takes the box to another site, that's amazing, you just beat the code. Yeah, you can't correct everything, but we're trying, and like you said, building departments have enough on their plate. All right, so ceiling and wall insulation, we're going back to mandatory requirements. Language was moved, 2013, mandatory requirement was 0.30, and this is assuming wood frame, and for walls, we only assumed wood frame walls. We didn't regulate non-wood frame walls as far as mandatory insulation is concerned. or non-frame walls, I'm sorry, metal was still included. So 2016, again, some language move, not too important. The mandatory insulation requirement was actually reduced. In other words, instead of requiring R30, we're now requiring R22. This really is because high-performance attics have proven that with less insulation at the ceiling, but some at the roof, this thing is much more efficient. So again, the prescriptive gets a little more restrictive, but you can add some sugar, salt, and keep it moving. Non-frame walls have now been addressed and are now subject to mandatory insulation requirements, just like a frame wall would be. R13 is 0.102 inside wood frame, so that's where that U factor comes from. Prescriptive, so this is where the change is. This is where the bread and butter is. The biggest energy savers in the 2016 standards were high-performance attics and walls, and instantaneous water heaters. That's the list. I mean, the other ones save some, but these are the major components here. So in 2013, you meet ceiling insulation really was the most typical way to do it. R30 or 38, depending on your climate zone, was the prescriptive requirement. Installed in ceiling or roof was the option. 2016, it's about the HVAC system. Similar to if you go in your car when it's sitting in the sun all day, it's 130 degrees in there, right? It's baking. The same can be said with your attic. If you go up there in the summertime, it's baking up there, and guess where your HVAC system is? It's up there. Guess where that cold air is trying to push through hot ducts inside your attic? So for that reason, we required or introduced requirements for high-performance attics. We'll get into a couple of them right here, and let's look at this. So this is kind of, I'm not a fan of these things, but the older I get, the more simple they seem to be. So you got two options, right? Either you move your ducts inside your conditioned space, which doesn't mean you're literally seeing the ducts. Sometimes they'll build down the plenum and then they travel in the plenum, so that's cool too. If you do that, only ceiling insulation. In other words, forget the roof. There's no point because there's no HVAC system up there. Ducts located inside your conditioned space. Duct leakage is applicable across the board, so don't worry about that. Now, if you choose to leave your ducts inside your attic, well, we need that attic to perform at a high level. And this is only for climate zones, certain climate zones. Climate zone 6 and 7 does not require it, just because 6 and 7 is San Diego, kind of Pismo, really calm weather, really not extreme. I like to say if you're buying flip-flops in December, don't worry about it. You don't have high-performance attic or wall requirements. So how do you meet it? Either insulation above your roof deck or below your roof deck. Everything else is the same. It's just where you place your insulation again on the roof assembly. Keeping it going. Again, depending on climate zone, there's different options. Radiant barrier is required, except when you use one of the options, radiant barrier is no longer cost effective. So instead of 2 through 15 climate zones being required to install radiant barrier prescriptively, it varies now. So again, there's 3 options available, and there's a PV credit that's a little bit bigger this time around in 2016 versus 13. It's tied to the high performance attic or wall measure, and tying back to climate zone 6 and 7, because they don't have high performance attic or wall requirements, there's no PV credit. You can install it, but there's no way to model or get any benefit from a PV system. Okay, so we're getting to the options. Option A, continuous insulation required above the roof rafters. So this blue here is your continuous insulation. You've got some level, probably R30 or 22, depending on where you're at. And ventilation. One thing about high-performance attics is they need to be ventilated. You need to let air cycle this stuff out, because if not, again, you're baking. You don't want to bake your HVAC system. That's the idea for option A. Radiant barrier is required, again, 2 through 15. This is just like 2013. 2016, note 2, 3, 5 through 7. So the cost effectiveness went down when you have this type of assembly for radiant barriers, so it's a little bit different. So installation is required below the roof deck in this scenario. Some real life pictures here. Assuming this loads, and here we go. No, didn't happen. There we go. Okay, so it's kind of netted in a way so that it doesn't go anywhere. Again, this is below roof deck, whereas the last one was above. Nothing too major. But the idea is you're creating an environment for your HVAC to not be baking. Option C, again, this is bringing your HVAC system and your ducts inside of the conditioned space. So this is the little socket that I was talking about. It's just, it drops your ceiling a bit or raises it, depending on how you want to look at it. Radiant barrier again across the board, except for 1 and 16, your colder climates. And one of the funny things is this is supposed to be an attic without ducts in it. Well, it's hard to get pictures of that, so pretend you don't see these ducts here. That's an attic with no ducts. All right, so wall insulation. Again, this is really just increasing the value. That's all it is. This one isn't a different type of assembly. Just 2x6, R19, and some rigid on the outside or inside, depending on where you want to put it. That's what happened in 16. 13, 2x4, R13 plus 5, R13 cavity, 5 continuous was the baseline. 2016, it's really going to require 2x6. But again, this is prescriptive, so like we said, performance, get out of it if you'd like to. That's it for res. I'm running, but we've got 34 minutes left. Any questions before we jump into non-res here? No questions, please? I'm from the hotline, so, I love questions. You guys think of any, interrupt me. We're making really good time right now. Okay. All right, so let's get into non-res and see what changed, right? So administrative regs, again, this is the dry part. What changed, right? More people can sign. We added architects to the people who can sign or take responsibility just because the Professional Engineers Act says in certain scenarios, architects can sign. So we wanted to be matching with what the Professional Engineers Act said. Acceptance test technician certification requirements, we just changed the numbers instead of 10-103A, 10-103.1, nothing too major. Everything's going to be facilitated through your acceptance test technicians. Nothing to say here. Let's get into energy. So similar to the residential slide, I don't really like this one, but we've got a beautiful handout for you guys. First one, if you want to sleep, you read that. If you want to be entertained, let's look at a drawing, right? So what changed in 2016, right? More efficient HVAC system is one of them. Covered processes in certain scenarios, elevators, escalators, moving walkways. We've addressed some energy efficient measures within those aspects. Direct digital controls, making sure your system communicates appropriately when you have 3 or more zones. And outdoor lighting, minimal changes, nothing too major. The door and window interlocks is it's a big deal. We'll get to that one in a second. All right, moving forward, HVAC minimum efficiencies, these are just values that came from 90.1. We adopted them early. So if you want to look at them, you'll find them in these tables at the bottom. It's nothing but a change of a number. So direct digital controls, this is something that we've introduced in 2016, been a little bit more direct on when we want these things to comply. Tables are great. I love tables. I think the way that it was written previous to this cycle was a little bit indirect. So let's look at an example here for what we want. So say, for example, you have a newly constructed building, and your air handling system, excuse me, serves all the zones for that system, air handling system, and all zones are served by that system. Okay, so in newly constructed building where your system serves all zones, if you have 3 or more zones with a capacity over 300,000 BTUs, we've got direct digital control requirements. It's as simple as that. I love this table. I know the guy who made it, and I'm really thankful because from a hotline perspective, what does any of this mean, right? When you see it in words, you get a table, it's pretty clear. Newly constructed, there's 3 options, additions or alterations. For the most part, you had to have the controls there before it's required to be installed again. A couple requirements as far as capability is concerned. I don't want to bore you with that. You can look at the slide if you'd like. Okay, so before we get into this one, let's not read it. So we got some time for some Game of Thrones, right? Okay, so one of the problems with buildings is you can make them as efficient as you want, but people, occupants, behave the way they behave. When I leave my cube, I turn off my light just because I eat and breathe this stuff. When other people do, they don't turn off their light. I go in there and I turn the lights off for them because what are we doing? So what happens in my life, right? So in my life, I'm at home, we're watching TV on a Sunday night, right? It might be 6 p.m. And we've got Game of Thrones on, right? And my dog, when she wants to go outside, Penny, if you remember, she hits the blind. We've got blinds, the long ones that hang to the ground. She hits her nose on the blind, and I know she wants to go outside. So what happens? I get out, open the screen door, open the glass door, screen door, and I close the screen door because I want to be able to hear when she's back, because if not, she's going to be out there and I'm going to be enthralled with Hodor. So what happens? I close the screen door, I sit down, the HVAC system comes on because I'm in Sacramento at 6 p.m. It's still hot. When the AC comes off, my wife says, you left the door open. I say, so I pause Game of Thrones. I stand up, I get the door, close it, whatever, come back and sit down. So the point of this is to say my wife controls this occupant's behavior. And she does a good job, and we save energy, right? The same way I turn off the lights in people's cubes. Now, going back to cost effectiveness and technical feasibility, from a standard standpoint, we can't require that my wife be installed in these buildings. It's not cost effective. It's not technically feasible. It's one of her. She makes a lot of money. It's not going to happen. So what do we do, right? So how do we control occupant behavior, right? Automated controls, right? The only way, because when you leave, we've got off sensors. When you leave the building, we've got a time clock. And when you leave that window open or that door open to the outside for more than 5 minutes, we're introducing automatic shut-off controls, okay? And this is touching back on whether this is new construction or alterations. This is strictly new construction, so we don't expect you to retrofit an existing building with sensors on every single opening. So for newly constructed buildings, if you've got an operable wall or roof opening, within 5 minutes of that thing being open, the HVAC system has to turn off, okay? Going back to mandatory prescriptive, this is prescriptive, so again, trade it off, take a penalty, get your way out of it. Control manufacturers already have this functionality. The same way that your Honda Civic comes with roll-up windows or automatic windows, it's up to you to select that option, so controls exist with that option already. So it'll disable the HVAC system or reset it to 55 for heating so you don't freeze to death, or 90 to cooling so you don't sweat to death. Again, 5 minutes is the cutoff time. A couple exceptions: if you've got automatic closing doors, well, no big deal, no sensor needed. And if you don't have a thermostat, then how are we going to control 55 or 90? No requirements. Questions on this one? This one, again, is kind of a big deal. No questions. We're good. All right. It's getting into covered processes. This is mandatory. I didn't put it on there because it was too big. So new mandatory requirements for elevators. One of the problems with elevators is they run continuously. In other words, if you've got lighting, you've got ventilation in there, it runs. If you're not in there, or if you're in there, the lights are on and the ventilation is cycling air out. And if no one's in there, what are we doing? Why are we tempering air? Why do we have lights on if no one's there? So what do we do? This is again from 90.1, ASHRAE 90.1. We set wattage limitations for the lights, as well as ventilation, fan efficacy requirements, making sure the fans don't consume more energy than they need. And again, when these things are vacated after 15 minutes, turn it off. There's no reason for these things to be continuously running. These really logical requirements, I like them, but again, consider the source. These things, there's 4 major manufacturers that were consulted with regards to this regulation. Similar to, again, when your Civic has automatic windows or manual windows, they've got models. Each one of them have models that jump through all of these hoops already. It's up to the builder or designer to spec them out and make sure that they're installed. But they already exist. The manufacturer pumps them out that way. So it's not a whole lot on the building department as far as verification is concerned on this one. As far as the lights are concerned, this is kind of a talking point here. ASHRAE 90.1 said we want efficacy the same way that Perez says, a lot of watts, a little bit of light. For non-Perez, we've never said that before. We've always said we'll give you this many watts per square foot, and it's up to you to figure out, oh, incandescent won't cut it, okay? So for that reason, we're continuing with, we'll give you 0.6 watts, which in a 25 square foot elevator, it's 15 watts. If you see an incandescent in there, something's wrong. 15 watts, it's probably LED. Continuing with covered processes, we've got escalators and moving walkways. When you go to your mall and you see the moving walkway or the escalator, right, it's running at full speed, non-stop, even, again, if no one is on there. There's no reason for this. There's no reason for this. Now, more importantly, this is only specific to certain locations, so before we get too angry, airports, hotel, transportation areas, so, you know, that's the list. If you're not worried about those, don't worry about this. The idea is when no one's in area or on, these things need to ramp down to minimum allowed level. I can't remember what it is, but the point is, don't run at full speed if it's not necessary. Once you get close enough to this sensor, once I kind of get there, ramp up, and again, don't accelerate to 0 to 100, right? We want to have, there's requirements. We reference the standard for a reason. Slowly ramp up, be gentle, don't make people fall. In the event that this thing fails, run at that normal speed. So we've got requirements that say, hey, if these sensors stop working, well, I would be really frustrated if that thing's going at this rate, right? So once the sensor breaks, run at full speed. It'll fail safe. Envelope prescriptive, similar to the HVAC efficiencies, numbers have been lowered. It's not a whole big deal. Just more efficient, more insulation. Some language was relocated just for consistency. We've got Martin saying that our standards are really convoluted, and that's the reality. There's stuff located everywhere. We've got to push back. We've got to push back from Calvo, from every single ICC chapter except one that signed off to a letter that was presented by Calvo that said it's too complicated, it's too scattered. And touching on my hotline experience, you're right. There's no way to say it other than this stuff is complicated. Having said that, 2016 has been adopted. It's not like we can say, let me put some white out and change this, right? But 2019, the rulemaking process is coming pretty dang soon. So with that said, Calvo's agreed to kind of have a more vocal voice in the development of the 2019 standards, and hopefully 2019 is going to be better. I'm an optimist, sometimes pessimist, most of the time, but I really think that there will be something better coming soon. Minimum daylighting requirements have changed. It's a lot of words for calculation. Nothing really to say there. Again, as far as these values, they're lower. That's really all you have to know. When I say lower, a lower U factor is more efficient. So. Lighting. So this is the bread and butter. This is the one that I like to talk about. Coming back to my experience, I took those calls. I'm the person that a contractor called and said, my lighting system, my lighting business is going to be defunct because I now have to install these controls. And it's pushing the cost effectiveness for an owner, from an owner's perspective, outside of the realm where they want to keep my business alive. And that's a big deal. My dad's a laborer, so it's a big deal. Point of that is to say 2016 changed a lot of that. Again, reduced power by 35 or 50% depending on the space that we're talking about. What do we require? An area control or an automatic shut-off, and an automatic shut-off control. And if you don't have a motion sensor or a time clock connected to your space already, just do it. It's not that much. We're not asking for daylighting. We're not asking for demand response. We're not asking for dimmers. That's huge. Dimmers is what killed it. So we're moving away from some of those things as long as you prove 50 to 35% reduction, which it's easy. So I jumped ahead, but it's a passion of mine, so we'll come back to where we are now. Power adjustment factors are credits. Basically, if you install controls that are above what we require, we'll let you install more watts because the end result is you save energy anyways, right? So a couple of them went away because the standards made some of these things mandatory. In other words, we'll get to it on the next slide. Partial on, multi-level, and combined manual dimming. They're gone, but these are two of the new ones here. This is the table. We made them in red so that you can see them. Daylight dimming plus all off. What does that mean? When you have 150% of what you designed as far as the light level is concerned for this room, turn off your lights. In other words, if the sun is giving you enough light, 1.5 times of what you thought you were going to have, why are these even on? There's no reason. So if you want to jump through that hoop for us, we'll let you install a little bit more watts. Institutionalized tuning, this is really like a rev limiter. I like to relate it to cars. Your car may be red lines at 7,000, 9,000, depending if you've got a nice car, or 5,000 if it's a diesel. Point being, tuning changes your rev limit down a little bit. In other words, instead of 100% output, cap it at 85. You cap it at 85, you won't tell the difference. We've been in rooms where they dimmed it by 15%. Nothing happened. I call them liars. It's like you haven't done anything. You won't notice it, and you're saving energy. You don't need 100%. So if you do that, again, we'll let you install more watts. We'll call it a wash. Oh, wrong click. Lighting alterations. So this is a huge one. So one thing that we didn't talk about earlier, actually we'll get to it on the next slide. Simplified language, right? Again, 35, 50% reduction, a lot of the hoops. We rewrote, literally, if you look at the March version, all strikeouts and all underlines. Strikeout represents old language, underline represents new language. It feels like every cycle that happens with lighting. I hope we're in a happy place right now. We'll see though, we'll see. And I still take calls to this day. So I'll be on the hotline if you guys want to yell at anybody. I oversee them, so don't yell at them, let me take it. Acceptance testing, like you touched on earlier, not required when you add controls for 20 or 4 luminaires for the entire project, which if you look at this room, you might have 20 luminaires. So if you redo this room, no acceptance testing, right? It's a big deal. My understanding is it's really expensive to get an acceptance tester, and in some instances it may not be cost effective. And this is us recognizing that. So we're adapting, we're trying to evolve, and we're trying to hear people. This is huge. I've been in the seat where people don't hear, and it's frustrating. So I like this. So somebody, next slide. Let's get through this really quickly. So we called it entire luminaire alterations. This is removing and reinstalling or replacing entire luminaires. Whereas component modification, gutting, LED retrofit kits, something that somebody was talking about earlier. A little bit different, again, one-to-one replacements, entire luminaire, or redesign of your lighting system, entire luminaire alterations, modifications, or gutting, you keep the housing and just replace the guts. So 2 options available. This is more restrictive and the language isn't really helpful. This is huge, new for 2016 and 13. We'll touch on that right now. So somebody said it's really complicated, and I see a lot of prerequisites, a lot of triggers, a lot of convoluted options. So let's try and make this, oh, not the right program. Yeah, this is it. Okay, that's a little bit better. We've got 3 options. This is the one we've always had. When you're at or over 85% of what we allow, we hit you with the book. Area controls, multi-level shutoff controls, daylighting, demand response. When you're under 85%, oh gosh, I'm on the wrong column, I'm sorry. Over 85, yes across the board. At or under 85, area control, yes. By level, we'll allow checkerboard, which is huge before we would require dimming. Or at least per each luminaire, and shut-off controls. In other words, no daylighting, no demand. So if you're under 15% under, no daylighting, huge, no demand. 35 or 50, again, depending on the space. 35 or 50% reduction, what do we want? A toggle. Don't make me wait 30 minutes for these lights to turn off. Again, my wife would yell. Don't do that. So what do? Area control. Give them a toggle, let them turn it off when they leave. Multi-level, doesn't matter. Automatic shut-off. Again, motion sensor, time clock. You probably already have that. And if you have that, you call it a day. So it's a big deal, and there's a lot of pushback on a lot of these things, and this is why it took us till November to adopt the lighting alteration requirements, and the rest of the standards were adopted in June. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of people that are invested in these requirements and that rely on this income. So it's not easy, but we're trying, and I think this is huge. So as of August, I want to say 18th, 22nd, something like that, we approved, the Energy Commission approved the compliance option that allows the power reduction to be applied to projects today. So again, huge, huge. In other words, this is kosher. This is good for everyone today if they want to apply. You don't have to wait till January 1. A lot of invested people said, we love what you did with 2016, but can we do that today? And they said that in November, and it was like, well, nothing can be done today, right? But give us some time. So anyways, April business meeting was approved. So again, if you can reduce your power by 35 or 50%, this is no longer killing your projects, okay? Assuming you're not redesigning the lighting system or changing the area of the enclosed space. Again, a few qualifiers, I'm sorry, but that's the reality. Any questions on that? Compliance option is a big deal? We're good? Okay. All right. So that's it. That's res and non-res in a nutshell. Try to go fast just to hopefully sneak in some questions. Some resources here. We've got software available. 2016 is available now. You can play with it. I've played with it. You can model your building to see what it takes to get to net zero. It takes a lot, but I did it, and it was exciting. So you guys play with it. It's free. You can download it right now. Energy Pro's also been approved. CVEC Res and CVEC Com are public domain programs, so they're free. You don't have to pay anything. You literally just click, download, get the zip file, and start playing. It's not as intuitive, but I mean, what is, right? But you've got smartphones, I'm sure. So you've adapted. Energy Pro, again, this is the normal for phone calls that we get. Everybody's using that program. Right Soft Energy is approved for res, not for non-res. But again, they're approved. The ball is rolling on 2016, and I think we'll be fine for January 1. There's a link here. You'd have to transcribe it, but maybe you can ask for the PDF. We can send it to you. It wouldn't be a problem. HERS providers for 2013. This is the list. Actually, Cheers has been approved for new construction and alterations, so this is outdated. 2016, they're not ready yet, but we're working feverishly. Heriberto's part of that team, part of that unit, and they're working to get the ball rolling and make sure HERS provider is ready for the 2016 standards. Again, we see that happening, so the ball's going to roll. Approved acceptance test technicians, this is a list for 2013. We don't require that a certified acceptance test technician conduct a mechanical acceptance testing yet, just because thresholds in uniform coverage hasn't been met yet, so we can't have 100 acceptance test technicians only in LA. What does Sacramento or Redding do, right? So there's some criteria in there that has to be satisfied before we start requiring that a certified ATT be the one to conduct those tests. Lighting has been good for at least a year now. So in other words, anytime you see an acceptance testing form for lighting, better have a watermark that says NLCAA or CalCTP. Again, Heriberto's office is also working with those groups to make sure that they're ready by 2016's effective date. The Blueprint newsletter, this is, I want to call it my pride and joy, but it's really somebody else's in our office, but I'm really proud of it. We produce it bi-monthly, and it's really good. If you've got a question that comes up frequently, we probably addressed it here. Talk about the lighting compliance option for 2013. We've got, significant amount dedicated to just that. So if you want to subscribe to something and not be spam, subscribe to this list server. This is the one if you want to stay up to date on what we're doing and what we're clarifying on. Again, convoluted, standard, a lot of gray. This is where we try to make it black and white. And when I say we, I mean me and a few other people. We try to put people's feet to the fire and say answer, because if it's gray, building departments, depending on what side of the county you're on, it's going to be a different answer, and that's not good for anybody. Fact sheets, we've got a few of these. They're specific to one topic, whereas the blueprint hits on a lot of different things. This one is strictly envelope air sealing. We've got one for lighting wiring alterations, which is a big question that we get in 2013, which is why we made it. They're good. I'm a blueprint guy, the same way I'm a Niners guy, but Raiders are okay. Training, we provide training. I'm here. We've got a team. We've got a lighting guy. We've got my supervisor does this probably better than I do, and I do it pretty well. Maybe not. So we're available. We'd love to come out. If it's a small audience and it's in San Diego for 30 minutes, we'll try and find somebody else to come, but more or less we try to get out there and spread the gospel. Energy Code ACE is another group defended by the PUC. They provide really good stuff. We've gotten in the habit of reviewing their material to make sure it's kosher, and takes some time, but they have some really good resources. One of the things that they have is they have the manuals, the standards, the reference appendices, and the ACM, maybe the ACM manuals. In other words, 5 or 6 documents all in one searchable database. In other words, if you want to search for knee wall, you'll get 13 hits and you'll find them all in every single document we have. It's a really efficient way to control F things, and that's usually the easiest way when you have 1,000 pages. So they've got really good resources. They also provide training. Again, when we can't make it to San Diego for 30 minutes, we'll send these guys. It's a good team. 2 clicks. The hotline, these are my guys. I got a lot of bumps and bruises, but it's a good team, and it's a good way to learn. And they're all students right now, all from Sac State. So they're part-time, but they're good guys. I train them, all of them, and we'll be hiring soon. So if you've got anybody in Sacramento, we're interviewing right now. Call them. If they give you trouble, let me know. They're good guys. You can email. Email's good too if you want something in writing. That's what I like. Last thing, list servers. Go to this website, subscribe to Blueprint and whatever else you find interesting. If nothing else, subscribe to the Blueprint. It's good stuff. Actually, one of our hotline guys does the 3D drawings for that, so yeah, they do work. That's the list. Questions, please? Yes, thank you.
Going back to the HVAC shutoff.
Yes. Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that for a space that has its own thermostat, or is it for, you know, if you have like perimeter offices that are on one thermostat, you still need to have that?
It's definitely per zone, so we're not going to make one zone turn off when the other zone has the window open. You know what I mean? So if you have multiple thermostats, I hope I'm answering your question. But if it's controlled by a thermostat, now I think I understand your question. Whether it's in that space or not, it's subject to those requirements.
So if there's a thermostat in one office, but it controls 4 other offices, that is subject to that.
I'm pretty sure, and I'll get your name and number, and this is the hotline and me talking. So I'm pretty sure, and I'll say pretty sure. I'll get your name and I'll get back to you. But
I guess if that's the case,
yes.
you know, it's hard to keep everyone happy.
It is. It is.
I'm wearing a jacket and people are attacking, you know. So how are you going to expect to, I mean, I guess it's only when you commission it really matters, but I can imagine many instances where it's going to be too hot or too cold.
Of course. One of the calls we got on the hotline, which I thought was funny, was what temperature can I keep my office at? Because it's really cold in here. I don't think it's fair. And it's like, well, we can't do that. We can't control occupant behavior. You know, we give you the tools and it's up to you how you use them. Again, if it's a concern from a designer's aspect that this could create issues in a scenario where you have one thermostat controlling 5 different, we'll call them zones, but they're not zones because they're not controlled independently, maybe that designer chooses to go performance and model their way out of it. It's not a mandatory requirement, but I'll get back to you. Like I said, well, I don't have my card, but I'll try to get yours. I'm there. I'll be there. Yeah. Anything else? Yes?
Heat pump systems for space heating.
Yes.
Can you speak more to that? I'm confused whether that is.
It's not electric resistance, and as long as it meets minimum efficiencies, HSPF of 8.0 or 8.2, depending on capacity, you're good.
So you can do that underneath.
Definitely.
You
So
can do that in natural gas line supplies.
yeah. So the heat pump is fine, even if you have natural gas. If you go and it's fine, prescriptively or performance. If you go electric resistance, again, you lose 2/3 by the time it gets to you. And they're efficient in the sense that they heat up a piece of metal. There's not a lot lost there. But generation, distribution, by the time it gets to you, not too good. So the electricity that goes to a heat pump is a lot less than electric resistance heating. So for that reason, heat pumps are wonderful. They do have electric resistant aspect when the load can't supply what's necessary. We require controls in that instance to say you can use electric strips, but only when you need it. Get a thermostat that knows what it's doing. But yeah, that's a good question. When my net zero home was a heat pump with a heat pump water heater, heat pump face finishing, heat pump water heater, because I didn't want to play with gas. So yeah, no, you're perfectly fine with that. More? Thank you for your time.